your own private tour guide. Coming soon.
So first of all, this one's very nicely organized. 4 shots plus audio. It's great. So I know right where to go to get started. I'm going to dig into this first shot with the bike, the UI over on the right, and line down the middle of the street. And those are all found here. Now, I'd love to get into a lot of detail about this. There are many nice things. This particular student has a nice knack for using blending modes to kind of dial in the look of translucent elements, which is the way I like to do it as well. So that's a combination of blending modes and opacity to dial those in. One thing that was done here was using Mocha Pro, which is, not dissimilar from Mocha AE, just a bit more powerful in a few ways. This student did a pretty elaborate roto of the handlebars, really, really thorough. Much more so than needed to be, given that the actual area of the handlebars that's crossing the blue line is pretty much just right here around the headset and that rack. But student decided to go for it, and honestly, a lot of this you kind of get for free once you get rolling in Mocha, so that definitely took a worry away. So the camera tracking is actually found here in the pre-comps, and in this pre-comp you can see the basic workflow that was used for this background element, where there is a lens distort over here, so the scene was undistorted, and all the comped elements are below that lens distort, and then that's bringing it back. And if you want to peek at the student setting, you can see it there. It's applied with an expression, which is great. That chains it to the original, so if there was any mind change of what it should be, that change ripples throughout. That's really elegant work there. So now I'm going to go to the UI over here, and let me actually, before I dig in here, notice that there's no undistort on this one. This element is just used straight. It's fairly near the center of the screen, and I think the student just decided not to hassle with making it distorted, although you could argue with that. It probably actually should have some distortion given how close to the edge it is. But not so worried about that. What I want to do is solo just this bottom screen layer and the background and loop out this ramp preview for you. Now, as it's ramping up slowly, notice the amount of jitter between the edge of the frame and this part of the handlebar rack. It really caught my eye almost more than anything else in the scene at first. Like, this is very distracting. This is a real problem because I think the track is actually pretty well locked to the hand grip, and that inevitably is going to mean, because of parallax, that there's going to be a problem over here. If you did it the other way around, you'd have the problem over here. What I'm going to suggest for this is a little unorthodox, and yet I think it's the right solution. So back in this comp, we have a lot of different elements, and I, again, can't go through all of them, but you have some niceties like the count ups in the numerical data. That's great. So that's the main UI animation happening here. But there's a null, and again, this was derived, I believe, from Mocha. And Mocha Pro was applied to the plate again. So position and rotation came off of this point, yeah, closer to the hand grip. And so what I want to do is basically make the motion smoother. And there's an easy way to do it. Easy, non-destructive way to do it. Property, smooth under expressions, and this time I'm not even going to change it. And I'm going to do the same for rotation. Rotation in this case actually had even more jitter than position. And of course I could have copied and pasted But again, I'm just applying it, clicking outside to set it, and leaving it at the defaults. So I'm not even going to get into what width and samples do. It's easy to look that up. I think that the width is the main influence on how much smoothing is going to happen in this case. But in any case, let's take a look at this over the background. And actually, it'd be more pleasant to look at it here in the main comp. So now what was annoying me is minimized. And not only that, the whole shot doesn't feel as jittery anymore, since this was the main thing drawing my eye initially. So to me, this is a great improvement. And again, talking about the storytelling aspect of visual effects, this tells me that my future AR will even do motion smoothing that's intelligent. So it feels more intelligent now. And the same adjustment works on the ground plane. One thing I want to point out here, so the track was done, I'm in the wrong place. Let me go back to this one. The track was done on this background layer that's been undistorted. And the points are rather small here, so I'm going to make them bigger so we can just evaluate them for a second. So the proportions look pretty okay to me as I go through the scene. So unlike at least one of the examples I showed you, this one doesn't seem to have a lot of rogue points. I think it's just a difficult scene because it's so dominated by the handlebars, but by rotoing out the handlebars, you prevent points from sticking to them. And that is the main advantage here. That said, the average error, not so hot. 1.55 theoretically is not a successful track. But I think that that didn't matter as much in this case. And so as far as why it didn't matter, I would have to say that having taken a look at the points and seeing that they're good, that the average error may have more to do with how odd some of the elements are in the scene and how fast they're kind of flying at the camera. So I'm sure there are areas of the shot where we wouldn't have as much success, but so this is the track that was used for that ground plane, and I think it's working really well. Now, because time is of the essence, I'm not going to spend as long on any other shots, but let's just take a peek. One thing I really liked here is the way that this screen is floating in front of the podium in a way that totally convinces me that it is locked in there. And so if I just isolate that screen, actually what happened here, what I have is 3 different blending modes. So again, really nice color over screen over multiply to get the look. If I take any one of them out, you see how it changes. So that's really, really good. I like it. And using both a screen or add and a multiply is a great way to get both the dark and light tones. And then the color, of course, is making the color of the elements a bit more dominant here. And there is an opacity of 60, so that was how that was dialed in. As far as the motion track goes, this one was more successful, 0.9 track. And if I reveal the points, you probably noticed in your own effort, there are a lot of them. And what the student managed to do here was get a target right on the front of the podium here, and then effectively just move it out on its z-axis so that it is a consistent distance from the face of the podium. Now, how were those points found to nail the podium? Well, it looks like it had to be done a bit carefully. Maybe it would be more successfully done toward the end of the shot, but boy, that really looks like kind of a bee's nest of points, doesn't it? In this case, I think I would make them smaller. so that I can see where they are, and that looks like that's going to make it easier to pick the ones that I want for each of those surfaces. Notice that there's the restroom marker way out here, and there are some points handily right near that as well. And then this shot, the killer, really, really successful here. And again, a similar workflow where we've got optics compensation on the entire thing. The foreground icons, I don't know, oh, these are the sky ones, so it didn't seem to the student to be necessary to distort those into place. And let's see if I can figure out how they're tracked. So the track here, again, seems to come from Mocha Pro, so I'm guessing that the student actually tracked just the mountain in order to get those to stick. That's a great idea. And then in this one, we need to go down the bottom. And let's just look at Camera Tracker for this particular example. So the advanced controls, there we go. Okay, so again, I didn't even analyze, but these seem like healthy sets of points. I think a lot of the issue with this shot was in the lens distortion. That said, the average error here is over 2, so conceivably you would have a disaster track here. But in fact, I think a lot of the error is happening toward the fringes, and the elements were placed more in the center. In this case, the student also activated detailed analysis, which is kind of a black box additional thing you can do just to see if you get a better track. So it's basically telling After Effects to try harder and use more points. And so I'm not going to A/B this one or break the whole project, but that is one function that can come in handy. Now, whether the student actually deleted some stray points in any of these shots to even get it down to this level, I don't know. But in any case, the path is really sticking well to the ground, and there's a really smart choice of where to bring in Mocha instead of using the Camera Tracker. So with that, let's move on to a different example.
Your own private tour guide, coming soon.
A lot of the solutions for this project were found in the other one, but there are a couple things I thought it'd be helpful to point out. You can tell a lot about somebody's workflow by looking at their project. Here we are in the master comp, and you can see that the student was in kind of a rush to get that last shot done. So there's a lot of elements in here that are just from the last shot. Otherwise, we'd have a nicely organized set of layers again, plus the audio down here at the bottom. And likewise, you can see that the blending modes of the layers aren't working as well. That's not, so legible. Let's see if I can just grab it. So it looks like we've got color and screen going on here, and there's just more you could probably do. I mean, you could take the color layer. There's already a hue and saturation on here. I'm just going to reset it, and you could basically roll the hue around until you were kind of happy with the amount of contrast that you got out of that. And then screen mode, that's at 100%. I would maybe change that to an add, just make it a bit stronger. But let's focus on the track a little bit. So down here at the bottom, we do have the undistorted layer with Camera Tracker on there. Tiny little points once again. And I'm going to just lay over that the line, if I can find it. There it is. So this is tracked in, and you can see that By the way, the tracking error was very similar to last time. There's a Mocha effect in here, and I don't think it's doing anything. So that might have been a little Hail Mary when this track wasn't totally behaving itself. What I see here is a surface that's not aligned. And so if we take a look at the track itself, what I would want to do, first of all, make my point size bigger. And then I'd be looking for tracks that are planar to the road, and I might have to go to different frames to find them. Yeah, so like back in here. I see we've got some hiding over here. Okay, good. So I'd be looking for the frames that are like, yeah, like those three. And so the solid now, yeah, it's actually lying right on the ground, which that line is not. I think the blinking on the line was probably a bad idea. You know, AR is in one of those areas of computer graphics, kind of like synthesized humans, where little things make a big difference to what's acceptable or just utterly alienating. And this is a little too busy, even just on its own, although on its own I can almost handle it, but once you've got everything in there, not working so well. And so a lot of the other things that we already learned apply. And then let's take a look at the other shots here. Again, we could just have better comping of the layers, better handling of blending modes and so on. And again, I would be careful to get these planar to something, because I think they look like they're a little off only because they're at sort of funny angles. And then this one actually pretty successful, and a couple of really nice things to call out here. Let's see if I can find them. So the woman has a nice simple roto on there done with Mocha. That was a great call because that is working really well. And once again, if you think about these graphics in the background, this is typical of what happened trying to basically use the motion track to lock them in there. 1.67 pixel error on this one, so actually a better track than we saw last time. And the dots are locking well, but if you think about it, because of parallax, the furthest from camera graphics are going to have the most problems. And that's why, in this case, cheating and tracking them to the mountaintop, as we saw in the last example, was a better idea. But overall, everything in this project is actually not that far away from being really successful. And so you can see that there were some false starts and some attempts in different directions. But overall, this would be one that I would think a short amount of time to do a take two would actually result in a really good final set of shots. All right, so that's going to do it for this one. And thank you, as always, for your hard work on these assignments.